Research into managing anthelmintic resistance in sheep parasites has been ongoing for more than 25 years in New Zealand. Now scientists in AgResearch's Animal Health and Nutrition group are focusing on cattle, with a trial looking at efficacies of different methods of drench application.
There hasn't been a lot of research done in cattle parasites for decades in New Zealand, but it's a growing issue both here and overseas. So what we know is that every farm in New Zealand has drench-resistant parasites. We have not been able to find a single farm, a cattle farm, either dairy or beef, that does not have resistance in Cuperia. So that's the status quo. It's now absolutely the norm. Where it's become a bit interesting is because Cuperia is not very pathogenic, it doesn't tend to create much of a problem. And once advisors and farmers cottoned on to the idea that the problem can be sorted by using levamisole, then it's basically dropped off the radar. So it's there, but it's not really causing much of a problem. It's easy to deal with. So what's changing recently is that we've now confirmed the presence of resistance to several drench families in Ostatagia. And Ostatagia is highly pathogenic parasite. It's the most pathogenic parasite in cattle. It's more than capable of killing calves and of killing adult cattle. So cows, dairy cows, the whole lot. So it's a very different kettle of fish to working with Cuperia. We know that we've got resistance, and we know that it's on commercial farms in the North Island. And that's about all we know. We're looking at this issue of which drenches, because that's an easy thing for farmers to fix. So we're talking about what drench products and how are they delivered. And we're also working on some diagnostics. So we're trying to develop a cheaper and more efficient test for resistance in Ostatagia and cattle. And we're starting some work on the ecology of the worms because we don't actually know very much about them, and we need that in order to make progress. The really obvious thing is the use of combinations. It's now well established, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, that the use of combination drenches is the way to not only optimise parasite control, but also to slow the further development of resistance. In this country, we have a raft of combination products registered for use in cattle, so there is no excuse for farmers to be using single-action drenches in cattle. The second is we've been doing some work on the routes of administration, so we have basically porons, injections and orals. And the background to that is there's now a groundswell of information coming out around the world about porons being a bit dodgy, their ability to work is a bit variable, and sometimes they don't do the job as well as you might think. And so we started this work where we had an expectation that the injections and the orals would be far better. And we were somewhat surprised to find that, in fact, the injection was no better than the poron, but the oral was significantly better. Now, that was against resistant Cuperia. Some evidence, and this is very new, and we don't by any means have all the answers, is that oral drenching delivers more drug to the worms in the gut than do injections and porons. And so we're taking a position at the moment, until we have reason to say otherwise, that the drug of choice is an oral. Within the farming community, there's obviously some resistance to using orals because a lot of guys say that it's too hard. It's too hard and it's too dangerous. And in some cases, that's true. You know, a 600-kilogram bull with a drench gun is not somewhere I want to go. But with a 100-kilogram dairy weaner, it's not really a problem at all. A lot of farmers now, once they've tried, and particularly those trying to use drenching hooks, there are a lot of guys finding that it's not as hard as you think, and it's becoming more routine practice. And of course, the carrot is that the cost differential is so great that the savings can be spent on putting in better facilities and putting in better yards. Standard test for drug resistance on farm is the fecal egg count reduction test, which involves the vet going out and doing sampling, treating the animals, and then going back and collecting a post-drench sample. So the problem is that in New Zealand, for cattle farmers, it virtually never gets done. There would be almost no cattle farmers in New Zealand have ever done one. And we also have some concerns about the ability of this test to pick up resistance in Ostatagia. There's some technical reasons for that. but at least in our hands, it doesn't seem to be that good a test for Ostatagia. So what we're working on here is in vitro tests, lab-based tests, which we're hoping will solve that problem. They will be cheaper, it will be easier for the farmer and the vet, and it will be able to diagnose resistance in situations where you can't do it on farm. What we've got here on the screen is some multi-drug resistant Ostatagia from cattle off a couple of commercial farms in the North Island. One of those is a dairy heifer operation and the other is a dairy beef operation. With these parasites, we've got a three-way project funded by AgResearch's core funding, and the bulk of that is looking at the pharmacology of the drugs and the routes of administration. So that's what's the best drugs to use to combat these parasites and what's the best way to deliver them. And then we've got two other projects. One's around trying to improve diagnostics to come up with a cheaper and more effective test for drug resistance, specifically in Ostatagia. And the other is we're starting to work on the ecology of the parasite so that we can understand more about what's going on and hopefully build some models which will be useful in future management.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.